Welcome to the Intelligent Business Show, a podcast from Aberdeen discussing the latest trends to keep you and your business at the top of your class. And now, here's your host, Aberdeen's CMO in residence, Matthew Grant.
Hello and welcome to the Intelligent Business Show, the podcast that focuses on how organizations just like yours are using data to make their business more intelligent. I'm your host, Matthew Grant, CMO in residence here at Aberdeen. This week, we're speaking with Guillaume Cabane, VP of Growth at Drift, the world's first conversational marketing platform. Guillaume is a startup advisor, speaker, and has held numerous leadership roles at companies focused on marketing and sales technology. We invited Guillaume here to talk about how data and automation can improve the buying experience as well as sales and marketing performance. Let's dive in. All right, Guillaume, welcome to the Intelligent Business Show.
Thank you.
So we spoke ahead of time about things that you've done in your career thus far focused on improving the buyer experience. And in fact, you've described in various presentations that people are welcome to watch on the web, how you've used data, in fact, multiple data sources and automation to make the buying experience, the customer experience as they're doing research and things like that, just better for them. So I was hoping we could spend today talking about that. And I wanted to start with just the question, in your mind, like what is wrong with the experience of buying currently?
Yeah. I just have two numbers I want to share with the audience here to express to everyone what is wrong. There's a survey from Forrester that says that in 2015, 53% of B2B buyers preferred researching data on their own versus talking to a salesperson. And you might think, hey, things have gone better. This is like 3 years ago. No, actually, in 2017, that number has gone up to 68%. We're talking of 2/3 of your potential buyers who do not want to talk to you. If that does not feel like something is wrong, well, I'm sorry, something's wrong, right? Something is fundamentally wrong if your potential buyers are trying to avoid talking to you. And that's our fault. That's my fault as a marketer. And all the other marketers in software, we have created this world where people are trying to avoid talking to us. So that experience is broken.
So, and it's interesting because I know you talked about this in one of your presentations as kind of, oddly enough, reflecting a strange difference between salespeople and marketing. So even based on that experience, all right, 2/3 of people are saying they don't want to talk to anybody. But as you were pointing out, often the best salespeople, it's actually kind of enjoyable for people to talk to them because they personalize things so much and make sure everything they're doing is really focused on what the buyer wants, whereas marketers are doing the exact opposite.
Exactly. And so let's talk a bit about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what a great sales experience is, right? As a buyer, because I'm a consumer. Again, I'm as much as I dislike it, I'm a human and I buy things, right? And so as a consumer, I enjoy buying when the salesperson, when there is a salesperson, adds value to my buying experience, right? Helps me, informs me, and helps me do the right decision, right? That's an amazing experience, right? And we find often some of those salespeople, and that's great. Those are the best salespeople ever. Now, if we look at the marketing side of things, marketers don't have the luxury of this one-to-one relationship, right? Most of the time. And they need to, let's put it bluntly, they need to generate leads, a lot of them. And to do that, what we have resorted to as marketers is very interesting. If you think about the economics of advertising, it's a very low cost to annoy a lot of people. It's extremely low cost to put ads everywhere in front of thousands and thousands of people, so that a very small fraction of those people will self-identify as being interested in whatever your product or your offer is, right? 1%, 2%, 3%. That's kind of the click-through rates on the ads. What that means is that you are pushing from your company to the market, to the buyer, the effort of self-selection, which means you're actually not targeting anything. For all we say about hyper-targeted advertising, the click-through rate still means that you are annoying 97% out of 100 people, right? And so we're not adding value. We're actually destroying value. As marketers, we destroy value in that food chain, right? That's the problem that I see right now in marketing. It's the complete lack of value that's brought to the end user.
I think I totally agree with you there, and it's always been, and I think I have even voiced in other circumstances the same things you're saying, though I hadn't put it quite the way you did. What I was realizing is marketers, the way I was seeing it was, they're satisfied with incredibly sort of like puny results just because the effort, it costs so little to send tens of thousands of emails, or let alone buy ad impressions.
Yes, because the math works out.
Yep.
And I think there's something I shared with you in our previous call, which is I used to work, some time ago, I worked in IT security.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked in a company where we were doing analysis and research on scamming and phishing, and a lot to prevent fraud, especially amongst financial organizations.
Yep.
And what I realized as a marketer, is that phishing, the idea of sending emails to try and get people to send money for whatever in whatever country, right? Scamming and phishing is very close to marketing. There's a low cost of effort to send a lot of emails to a lot of people, and overall, some of them do send them in. Of course they do. Otherwise, no one would ever attempt doing scamming and phishing.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And what's interesting is that the conversion rates are not that far off, right? Because when you do cold email, like I know many marketers who do cold email outreach, and they have conversion rates like positive response rates in the 0.1% range.
Yep.
That's about the range of scamming and phishing. So like we do about the same thing. In both cases, we are sending an unsolicited email where we ask someone to give us money.
Yeah.
And sure, the ways are different. But in both cases, we destroy value.
Yeah, no, and that's why what I wanted to say is, along the same lines you were saying, I was looking at it, people do these sort of super inefficient tactics just because they're so cheap. The way you flip that around really highlights the problem with it. It's very inexpensive to annoy most of the people you're reaching out to.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, and if we just go, a layer deeper in that, the reason why I'm opposed to that is because that's scorched earth strategy. It works out if you don't care about your market, and if you don't care about destroying your brand and your market in the long term.
Yep.
And if you don't care about that, then fine. The math does work out, right? If you actually want to build a long-lasting company, if you want to create a brand that is loved and respected, then obviously you can't do that because you're going to burn your market in a matter of months. Yeah. And I have seen that happen. I have seen companies that have given very large list of emails to their marketing or sales teams that have blasted low-quality outreach to the best consumers targets in their market, and then they were done. Finished.
Yeah.
Nothing left.
Right. And that's right. There's no future in that game. And that's why I was very curious and interested in the approach you've taken. Now I was curious. So I'm specifically thinking about all the things that you've done so far to improve the buying experience just in terms of trying to capture more inbound traffic and convert more inbound traffic by making the web experience when people show up at your website that much more personalized and valuable. And so on the one hand, I know at the conceptual level and a kind of noble level, you were, in doing so, you're trying to make the buying experience easier. You're trying to remove a lot of the effort, this burden of effort on the buyer, as you just said. But it also sounded to me like you were trying to solve some pretty specific business problems, not just do something that was noble, but something that actually worked for your company.
Yeah. Well, for all the moral values that I have, I still, I'm paid by a company that needs to bring in revenue, right?
Right.
So the idea is how can I solve both problems, and how my quest is that as a marketer, I can create marketing that is so much better for my consumers that it will force my competitors to react. And ideally, really ideally, the entire market would change and would start doing high value marketing. Because then as a consumer, I would benefit from it. But it's very ego-centered. Right? As a consumer, I would love if I could get less spam and just the very few things that matter for me.
Right.
But let's go back to what you said about creating a personalized experience. All right. If we take a step back and we conceptualize it, we simplify the concept. What I'm doing is I am replicating what the best salespeople do. My wife is a salesperson. She's a very good salesperson.
Nice.
And so I have observed her. I have been in some of her sales meetings, right? And I have seen her close deals. And I've always thought she's amazingly good at a few things to add value. How can I replicate that? How can I scale that as a marketer? So let's look. What is she good at? She's good at knowing her customer, asking the right questions to understand who the customer is. Then she's good at changing her pitch, her proposal, based on what she has learned. And she's a salesperson, she's really good at pushing on what she has discovered is the real pain that the underlying pain that the customer wants solving. And so if you look at this interesting fallacy, and it's going to help explain what I'm doing, interesting fallacy in the world of internet marketing, which is A/B testing.
Right.
A/B testing is, I call it a fallacy because it's about finding a better average for everyone in your market, right? A better average message. I don't think there's anything as an average customer.
Right.
That doesn't exist. I like to say, often when I do keynote, I like to show a chart. It's a distribution chart, right? A usual N-shaped chart, right? And it's the size of male shoes in the U.S., right? Distribution of male shoes in the U.S. And I ask people, imagine now that you have an e-commerce shoe shop, and you want to put as a message that you are that you serve, the average customer. Well, you're going to say that you say we are the best at providing you with 10.5 shoes, and obviously that's stupid. No one would do that. But that's what we do as marketers. When we find an average message, that's what we do. And our customers are all different.
Yes.
Right? And so what we need to do as marketers to replicate the buying experience of salespeople is we need to collect data on who the customer is, what they want, and then we need to change their experience real time. And that's what I've done. And so if we go into the specifics of what I've done,
yes,
I've used a couple of data vendors. One of them is Clivet, to go from the IP address of the visitor to know what that company is, the domain of the company, the name of the company, and all the firmographic company details of number of employees, how much they raise, where they're based, what's their technology stack. And I know nothing about the exact person, but I know a lot about that company. I do B2B sales. That's enough.
Uh-huh.
Then I run predictive models based on what I know of customers that have been successful with Drift. We sell a live chat solution, conversational marketing. And so the companies that are successful with us have some specific traits. And we look at, what kind of potential customer is that? And what features have they been successful with? And automatically in real time, our website is going to change. It's going to adapt itself to what our best prediction is. Our chats, our own products, will pop up with a message that is adapted to that industry. We're going to name their competitors. We're going to name the technologies they have that we integrate with. We're going to name the country that they're in if there's something that is relevant about that, right? And even if they do not convert, we will follow up with them based on what we know about their website. Automatically, we will have crawlers go to their site and find out, do they have a form? What is the conversion rate of their form based on what we know of the length of form length in the field and the industry? How much will they gain by having a live chat versus the current form that they have? All of that research is done automatically, and we will reach out to them with some insights about the benefits they could have from our product that are specific to them.
So first of all, it sounds like I said, one of the things that struck me in watching your videos was this very novel and it seemed creative way of kind of enchaining different data vendors to actually help you make these calls. So you had mentioned Clearbit. I want to say you also had mentioned a company called Matt Kudo, but it sounds like maybe that was the past, because that would help you predict.
No, Matt Kudo is the scoring engine that we use.
Yep.
So if you want to think about how the orchestration happens,
yep.
I think up to about 6 months to a year ago, we would wait for people to go to our website, and we would start the enrichment, know about the customer, the scoring, and the actions once they had come to our website. And that was great, a major improvement compared to what all the other competitors are doing in our market. And then we started saying, why wait? Why wait for people to come to our site? Because there's only a fraction, maybe 1%, 2%, 3% of the total market that comes to us.
Yep.
What can we know about the other people? And so we started buying data that could tell us what the intent, the buying intent of companies that are in the market for a product like ours.
Yep.
We would buy data from G2 Crowd. We bought from technology change, what we call technographics, from DataNight.
Yep.
We bought topical intent data, what people are reading about, from Balboa.
Yep.
We would buy advertising spend from SEMrush. A lot of those things, we pulled all of that into a database, and we looked which one of those signals correlates or predicts to some extent future buying. And now here's what's important. Many people who know machine learning and AI will tell you, well, there's not enough conversions, not enough volume and signal for you to build a good model. And they're right. But here's the trick, Matthew. The trick is you should not look at the conversions with your product. If you look at a very big market and a large number of signals, and you just look at who has bought your product, obviously you don't have enough conversions. But because we're listening to technology change, we know what companies are installing, right, as software. We have built into a model which intent predicts technology change even from our competitors, because that proves that the intent is legitimate.
Yeah.
Right? If someone is reading about a lead generation or live chat and they install a competitor, well, that intent was correct.
Yeah.
We just failed at our sales effort.
Yes.
And now that gives you 10 times, 15 times, 20 times more volume of data because you're looking at all the competitors and how they got their customer. Right? And that's how we're able to build a model that is predictive.
Right, because that's instead of taking just your own bracketed data set, you're plugging into, you're tying things together so you can actually have a data set that actually reflects the entire market, it sounds like.
Yeah, and so then I can say, hey, this company, so then we have a model, so this company is doing those specific things. So maybe they have looked at reviews on G2 Crowd, which is like the Yelp of software.
Yep.
Maybe they have installed, one or two competitors as a proof of concept that we track in DataNight. Maybe they're increasing the ad spend. We know if they have hired a VP of demand gen, right? And then we say, well, okay, what's likely to happen? It's likely that they will buy one of the competitors that they have installed as a proof of concept. What's the likelihood that we can enter that deal right now? And then we make our own forecast based on how much it's going to cost us in terms of effort to go into the deal. What's the conversion rate that we forecast? What's the revenue that we forecast? Which means, is it worth it?
Right.
And so what we're doing is that instead of burning the market and going after everyone that we possibly could, we're making a forecast of, are we going to yield some margin? And is that margin high enough compared to what our margin goals are? And that protects us, it protects our brand, and it also protects the customer. If we forecast that the customer is already very advanced in the buying cycle of someone else, we're not going to go after it.
Right.
It's not worth it, right? We're just going to destroy value there.
Yeah.
Right? Of course, my goal is to get into more and more deals as possible and to get into those deals before any competitor. And sometimes, in an interesting way, we do. Sometimes we forecast that somebody is interested in a competitor tool, and we reach out before the competitor knows about it. That's fine.
Wow, that's also a very interesting use, I think, of this. Yeah, there's all this kind of buyer behavioral data that you're talking about, from reviews to ad spend, or rather, even ad consumption and intent. So it was one of the things that you said. So one of the things you were just talking about was in terms of the margin. One of the things that struck me was you were talking about how a lot of companies that are in the SaaS space, they have a lot of tiers of product that they sell. And so, and as you pointed out, at the high end, you need a lot of sales involvement, but that means you have to pay a salesperson, so that has an impact on margins. So you have to be very careful about when you get sales involved. And it's part of what your aim here was, how can I drive conversions, improve the buyer experience, be more targeted in my marketing, and drive more conversions without, relative to price point, without having to involve sales. Because it seems to me a lot of marketers, they forget sometimes this cost of sales element. Like they know what the cost of marketing is, but they're not thinking about the sales effort versus the potential outcome, because they're not even predicting what the deal could be the way you are.
100%. I totally agree. And when I look at my CAC, my cost of acquisition, it's interesting. When you look at the fully loaded CAC, the fully loaded CAC takes into account the cost of headcount, both on the marketing side, on the sales side, and on the support side. It's everything but product.
Right.
Well, the cost of selling, if you take into account like the commissions, the headcount and all that, is about the same as the cost of marketing, which is advertising spend plus headcount. It's about the same in our case, right?
Mm-hmm.
Half and half. And so, obviously, when you start making predictions, you look at what is the increase in conversion of each action, right? And what's the cost of each action? And so, sending a prospect, a customer, to a salesperson has two impacts that I have seen time and time over. It slightly decreases conversion, right? It's interesting, but it increases the average price of selling. Right? Which makes a ton of sense, because they're upselling people, and so there's less people and they also exclude some people that they disqualify from people, right? And so the total conversion goes down, but the price goes up. And so if you're good at your forecasting models, you can predict who has the buying ability to pay more and who doesn't, and you selectively send the lead to the salespeople or not.
Right.
I think there's something else I want to share that we have there, which is interesting, which is I've been sending thousands of leads to my sales team every month for the past couple of years. And usually, most companies, they distribute leads equally among salespeople, right? Everyone has a fair chance of succeeding every month. And when I look into my data set, I see, well, obviously, some salespeople perform way better than others.
Yeah.
Right? That's what a team is. And we also do automation. We automate about half of the leads so that we can compare and we can compare automation and learn from the salespeople. And what we found out is that some salespeople perform at an average of 5 times of automation. So if we have, let's say, 1% positive response rate, they have 5%. Some salespeople perform at a third of the automation,
Wow.
3 times less. And so I thought about it. Why should I have a fair, equal distribution of leads? Why should I not automate my process where the people who are way better than automation actually can get more at-bats than automation, and the opposite. And so that's what we have done, which means unless you outperform automation, you're not going to be given the chance to send an email on your own. If you do perform automation, you will get 90% of your leads. We keep a 10% retainer so that we can see if they increase manually or decrease on their own.
Right.
And so we are now treating salespeople like variations on a page with Bayesian distribution models.
Nice. No, I mean, it's
little tip of what we're doing.
Yeah, no. I think that, I mean, it makes perfect sense, especially, again, if you're taking a numbers-driven, sort of intelligent approach to the entire process, then, and it sounds like, you're looking at every touch point and what's converting and what's working and what isn't, and like you're comparing that to the cost and the potential return. It only makes sense to then apply that from end to end, the way you're doing it, and have this kind of Moneyball. Exactly. It's like a Moneyball approach to lead distribution, So
100%.
Yeah. So, all right, we're rounding the bend here into the end of our conversation, which has been fascinating and informative, Guillaume, and I wanted to thank you in advance for just taking the time to talk to us. The last thing I wanted to talk about, though, kind of you touched on with this, where do people outperform automation and where do they not? Because in one of your videos, I think you were speaking in Berlin, you said you wanted to create a human-like experience without the cost of that human. And you also spoke of creating the perception of humanity, even though there is none. And I guess this is maybe a more philosophical question, but do you see, or where do you see limits to this, this idea of human-like without the human? And it also speaks to even what Drift does, since I've interacted with Drift bots on different sites. So that's our outgoing question. Is there a limit to human without the human?
So I'm going to do a two-part answer to that.
Fair enough.
The first part is the psychological answer of why that matters. In our audience, if you have not read the book from Robert Cialdini, Influence, go ahead and read it.
Yeah.
This is the foundational book of many performance marketers like me. In this book, Robert Cialdini states something about the reciprocity, which as one of the 6 big principles of influence. What's happening here is the effect that you see of like higher conversion with a human effort. It's because as consumers, when we truly believe that another human has put in some effort in trying to say something to us or tell us something, we feel obliged to either at least read or respond.
Right.
Think about it. If you receive a handwritten letter that you are 100% convinced is handwritten, how likely are you to throw it away without opening it? Very, very unlikely.
Right.
Very unlikely.
Yep.
Very unlikely, right? That's because you will feel bad. You will feel bad. You will feel like you're a horrible person of throwing away the efforts of someone else that has tried taking a pen and written a letter.
Yep.
If you're convinced, on the opposite, that this is machine done, if you have like a mail that is just printed out, you don't care.
Yep.
Right? Because you know there's no effort. Okay, so that's the principle. That's the basic. Okay. There's two parts of that of the why. There's the belief of effort and there's the value. We know for a fact that up to now, when you get an automated message, email, letter, whatever, it's 100% automated. There's almost no value for you there.
Yep.
There's no personalization, no value. So what can I change? I can change both sides. I can leverage the perception of humanity. And if I want to preserve my brand in the future, I need to add the same value. With a lot of personalization, I need to be helpful for my customer.
Yeah.
Where does that break? Now, to answer your question, where's the end of that? Where does that break? There's two things. It breaks when you want to do things that technology does not enable us to do right now. Example, one of our best performing campaigns right now is when salespeople record themselves on a video with Vidyard. right? And they walk through the site of the customer and say, here's what I would do, here's what I do, right? We can't do that right now, right? That's not something we can do, like creating audio and human personas in 3D. That's just not worth it,
Right.
Okay? It's not something we can do. However, if you think of Drift and bots, if bots become, we're seeing that trend on Drift, and that's probably what we want to leave on. I'm seeing the trend of AI and machine learning bots that are faster than you at answering a question with the right answer, finding within all the documentation, all of the knowledge base of sales and support, what the best answer is to be helpful. And we can see that people are engaging more and more. Example of that, when we force people on a chat after an ad versus a landing page with a form and the content, we see 3x the conversion rate. People engage and people are more satisfied.
Nice.
So that's the future.
That's nice. And that's what goes back to also what you had said before, that one of the things you look at, like in terms of value and trying to promote the value of Drift, for example, you're going to reach out to companies and compare, like you said, look how many fields they have in their form, just take what you know data-wise in terms of conversions, and then you can even predict to them, look, this is what, we're just showing you what kind of improvement you could get using Drift.
Yes. So, one thing, Matthew.
Yes.
I almost never pitch my product in my email. I point out the problems they have.
Yeah.
And I point out, here's what you could be doing. And I let them come back to me. And I will continue to send one email every so often saying, hey, I found that you're doing this. By the way, your competitors do better, and here's how they do it. I found that you're doing that. I try just to be helpful, provide value. And in the end, what happens is they have a perception of me as my company saying, these guys are good. They know what they're doing. Probably they can help me.
Yeah.
I'm creating that perception. That's what everybody should be doing. Be helpful first. The money will come later.
And that seems like a great spot to end. So once again, Guillaume, very, very interesting thoughts, really cool things that you're doing, and also just ways of trying to, I think, hopefully listeners get you to think differently about how you can be applying data and intelligence to your marketing operations all the way through your sales operations, as Guillaume just described. So thanks again, Guillaume, for joining us here on the Intelligent Business Show. Thanks for listening, everybody. Given the Thanksgiving holiday next week here in the United States, we will be off the air. We will be back, however, the following week, and our guest then will be Blair Newman of Bell Integrator, and we'll be talking to him about machine learning frameworks and how to sell technology. Talk to you then.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Intelligent Business Show. You can find this show on iTunes and Spotify, as well as on YouTube. And be sure to follow us on Twitter at Aberdeen_show. And if you want to know what's going on in your market space, be sure to check out Aberdeen.com.